Before we can understand how Islam changed the world, we need to look at the world it was born into. This pre-Islamic time is often called Jahiliyyah, a word usually translated as ignorance. But that translation misses something important. In Arabic, the opposite of yal isn't just knowledge. It's a word called Ḥilm, which means calm strength, patience, self-control, and wise thinking. Yal, on the other hand, isn't just about not knowing something. It's about being impulsive, hot-tempered, and driven by anger or pride. Think of it this way. Someone might have 3 PhDs but still act with yal if they explode in anger at the slightest criticism. And someone else with little formal education might show Ḥilm, staying calm, kind, and thoughtful even under pressure. Ḥilm is like emotional intelligence before we had a name for it. It's not weakness, it's a quiet strength, the ability to stay centered when others lose control. The Arabia of the 6th century was a world where certain patterns dominated social life. Blood feuds created endless cycles of revenge. If someone from Tribe A killed someone from Tribe B might kill 2 people from Tribe A in retaliation, leading Tribe A to kill 4 from Tribe B, and on, a deadly multiplication problem with no end. While the idea of equal retaliation existed, people often saw forgiveness as a sign of weakness. Real men take blood for blood, they'd say. But Islam would flip that idea upside down. It redefined real strength, not as the ability to harm others, but as the self-control to show mercy and to forgive when you have the power to punish. Islam introduced a bold and beautiful idea. Peace isn't just something humans should aim for. It's built into the design of the universe. In this view, creation itself starts with peace. Paradise, the garden, is described as a place of perfect peace. But human beings were shown as creatures with the power to create peace or destroy it with bloodshed and discord. That's why some places on earth were made sacred, called haram, safe zones where violence was not allowed. Mecca, with the Kaaba at its center, was one of these. A space where people could leave behind conflict and feel protected, where violence was forbidden. But the idea goes even deeper. In the Quran, human life itself is declared haram, sacred. That means no one's life is worthless. Not just the lives of believers, but every human being. This dignity comes from our shared beginning. The Quran says, "We created you from a single soul." That divine breath that gave life to one gave life to all. So every person carries something sacred within them. While this new worldview permits equal retaliation, as sometimes necessary to prevent chaos, it consistently encourages moving beyond retaliation toward forgiveness as the higher moral choice. Islam didn't ignore the need for justice. It allowed qisas, equal retaliation, when necessary to stop chaos. But it kept pointing towards something better. Forgiveness. Think of it like an elevator. The ground floor is endless revenge. The middle floor is equal justice. The top floor, the ideal, is forgiveness and peace. And the message was clear. Aim for the top. Let's clear up a few misunderstandings. Some later interpretations claimed that the sanctity of life in Islam only applied to believers. But if we go back to the early teachings, that's not what we see. The Quran says all people were created from one soul. That divine breath, the spark of life, was given to everyone. So every person has dignity and value, no matter who they are or what they believe. Even in the early stories, there's a deep respect for peace. Take the story of Abel and Cain. When his brother came to kill him, Abel refused to fight back. He said, "I will not raise my hand against you." It was an act of moral courage, not weakness. Contrary to some modern portrayals, this shows something powerful. While Islam allows self-defense when necessary, it sees forgiveness and non-violence as the higher ground. And when force is permitted, it's not for revenge or power. It's only when a whole community faces destruction. Only then as a last resort. So even from the very beginning, there was a strong message of peace, restraint, and protecting life, not taking it. Imagine two very different worlds existing side by side in 6th century Arabia. Out in the open desert, Bedouin tribes lived simple lives. They moved from place to place, helping each other survive in tough conditions. There wasn't much wealth, but there was a strong sense of community. People shared because they had to. Working together wasn't just nice, it was necessary. Meanwhile, in cities like Mecca, things looked very different. Trade brought wealth, but not for everyone. A few people got very rich, while many others were left struggling. As Mecca became more powerful, the gap between rich and poor grew wider. The Quran didn't stay silent about this. It directly challenged those who had power, but used it unjustly. This wasn't just a warning. It was a pattern seen again and again in history. When a society becomes too unequal and the powerful ignore justice, it starts to fall apart. Islam's message was clear. A healthy society is one where justice, fairness, and compassion are for everyone, not just the rich or strong. The message of Islam wasn't just spiritual, it was a full-on challenge to the old way of life. It questioned deeply rooted habits and cultural norms. Things people had accepted for generations were now being re-examined. From idolatry to monotheism, worshipping one God, without images, without partners. From tribalism to universal human community, one that went beyond bloodlines. From economic exploitation to economic justice, fairness, charity, and justice. From sexual objectification to sexual ethics and dignity. From intoxication to clarity of mind and purpose, these weren't random rules. They formed a new vision, a kind of moral upgrade, a shift from reacting on impulse, Ya'al, to living with reflection and restraint, Ḥilm. It's like changing an operating system, not just patching problems, but replacing a system based on power and pride with one rooted in justice, compassion, and higher thinking. Even though Islam brought big changes, it didn't wipe everything away. It didn't say everything before was bad. In fact, the Quran kept many values from the old culture, but it reshaped them with deeper meaning. Generosity, once used to show off and win fame, became a quiet act of care for the poor, done sincerely, often in secret. Courage, once used for raids and personal glory, was now used to stand up for justice, even when it meant going against your own tribe or self-interest. Loyalty, once only to your tribe, was expanded to include loyalty to truth, fairness, and shared human values. Patience and truthfulness remained important, but now they had a spiritual weight, a connection to one's relationship with God. Think of it like refining gold. The raw material was already there. Islam didn't throw it away. It melted away the impurities and shaped those values into something purer, stronger, and more lasting. Before Islam began, Arabia wasn't empty of religion. It was actually a spiritual crossroads, a place full of different beliefs and traditions. Most Arab pagans believed in a high god called Allah, but they also worshipped many lesser gods and idols, kind of like how the Greeks had Zeus and other gods. This belief system is called henotheism, believing in one main god, but also honoring others. Interestingly, many practices we now associate with Islam, like prayer, fasting, charity, and pilgrimage, already existed in different forms. Islam would later reshape these into a unified way of life. There were also people called Hanafs, monotheists who rejected idols and followed the path of Abraham. They weren't part of any major religion, but they were searching for truth. Jewish communities lived in places like Yemen and Medina. Christianity had also spread, especially in the north and along trade routes, where monasteries and churches dotted the landscape. So when Islam emerged, it didn't appear out of nowhere. It gathered together these many spiritual streams, pagan, Abrahamic, ethical, and wove them into one clear vision, a return to pure monotheism, grounded in justice, peace, and human dignity. In the middle of this complex world, a man was born who would change history. Muhammad, born in the year 570 CE in Mecca, came from a respected family, but he was orphaned at a young age. He didn't grow up rich. He saw life from the perspective of the vulnerable. As he grew older, Muhammad became deeply disturbed by the world around him, by the unfairness, the greed, and the way the powerful treated the weak. But even before he received revelation, he took action. He joined a group called Hilf al-Fudul, the League of the Virtuous, a pact formed to stand up for justice, defend the helpless, and stop blood feuds. It was a sign of the kind of person he was, and the kind of future he would help shape. In the years that followed, he often went into the mountains, away from the noise of the city. There, he reflected, he asked deep questions about life, justice, and the human soul. This quiet time of reflection would become the preparation for something far greater, a message that would echo through history. The message Muhammad brought wasn't just about worship. It was a complete transformation of how people saw the world, themselves, and each other. Let's break down some of these revolutionary ideas. Radical monotheism, not just believing in one God, but relying only on God. This kind of trust freed people from fear. Fear of kings, fear of tribes, fear of anything else trying to control them. Moral awareness, taqwa, often called fear of God, but it's more like being morally awake. Having a kind of inner radar that helps you know right from wrong, even when no one's watching. Awakening from heedlessness, people were called to wake up, to stop living on autopilot. Islam asked them to live with purpose, to think, to reflect. Connection to earlier wisdom. The message didn't claim to erase the past. It built on it. Muhammad was seen as the latest in a long line of teachers like Abraham, Moses, and Jesus, reviving the core message of one God and moral living. Universal ethics. It wasn't about what tribe you came from. Justice, kindness, and dignity were for everyone. Islam introduced a global way of thinking, ethics that crossed borders, personal responsibility. No soul bears the burden of another. That means you're responsible for your choices. You can't blame your tribe, your parents, or society. It's on you. Human equality. We created you from a male and a female and made you nations and tribes so that you may know one another. The most noble of you is the most God-conscious. This radical leveling principle declared, no Arab has superiority over a non-Arab, no white over black. All are equal before God. In a world full of divisions, this was revolutionary thinking. This was more than a belief system. It was a call to rebuild society on truth, dignity, and justice for everyone. What began in the deserts of Arabia didn't stay there. It sparked one of the greatest intellectual and cultural movements in human history. From these early values, justice, reflection, equality, emerged a tradition that would stretch across continents and centuries. From these foundational principles, thinkers would develop diverse schools of theology, philosophy, mysticism, and jurisprudence, each offering unique perspectives on humanity's relationship with the divine and with each other. Muslim thinkers preserved and expanded the wisdom of the ancient world. While Europe lost touch with Greek philosophy, Muslim scholars translated and built upon it. They advanced fields like mathematics, astronomy, medicine, poetry, and more. And they didn't just copy knowledge. They asked deep questions about free will, justice, reality, and the soul. These weren't just religious ideas. They were part of a broader quest to understand the world, to improve life, and to seek harmony between faith, reason, and ethics. The story we've looked at today is just the beginning, a first chapter in a journey that's still going. It shows us how powerful ideas can shape entire societies and how the search to balance faith, reason, and ethics is just as important today as it was 1,400 years ago.